I'm going to be talking to Mike Ferry, who is the research director at the University of California, San Diego Center for Energy Research, about his September 13th op-ed in the LA Times, California's giant new batteries kept the lights on during the heat wave. So welcome to the interview, Mike.
Thank you, Markham. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, we're happy to have you here because this is a fascinating story. We all remember when California had its big outages last year because of last year's heat wave. And there was a lot of chatter in the trade press about the adoption of battery storage to prevent that this year. And it seems like that actually was a big success.
It was, and it's the first time that batteries played such a large role in helping the state confront and overcome its electricity crisis during a really extreme heat wave. It was the most extreme September heat wave ever recorded in state history. It pushed our electricity grid to the brink. And this was really the first time that batteries, and these are utility scale power plant sized batteries, played a role. And just to give you an idea on that, 2 years ago when the state did experience rolling blackouts, batteries were really just barely noticeable on the grid. In just the last 2 years, the state has added 10 to 20 times more batteries, depending on how you want to calculate it. And those batteries did play a critical role in preventing blackouts this year.
Right. We're talking about, if I understand this correctly, 3,360 megawatts, which is a considerable amount and more than the Diablo Canyon nuclear power plant.
Right.
So how much of that capacity was added since last year?
I'd say it's doubled or more since last year. The peak, and going back 2 years ago when the state last experienced those blackouts, the peak power output that batteries were able to provide was about 150 megawatts. And as you mentioned, this time around, it was over 3,300 megawatts. So that's a factor of 20 in just 2 years, which is absolutely amazing.
Now, were these all the kind of lithium-ion batteries that we're seeing in electric vehicles, or are these some of the more specialized, like vanadium flow batteries, those types of batteries?
There's some diversity in the battery fleet, but predominantly over 98%, I would estimate, are lithium-ion batteries. And they are similar to what we see in electric vehicles, but they're a little bit different. They have different chemistries and they're designed for different applications. For electric vehicle batteries, those batteries are really designed to be space and weight optimized and to provide a lot of power when you're accelerating the car, and then to be able to take in a lot of power when you're fast charging the car to refuel very quickly. The batteries on the grid are designed to be more energy type batteries, to charge and discharge slower and store more energy over time, optimized for that grid application.
Now, I understand the lithium-ion batteries in a grid situation, generally about 4 hours capacity.
Yeah.
And I've been interviewing some flow battery companies, and that's why I asked the question, who are now, they say we're at 12 hours today. Within a year or two, we'll be at 16 hours. Does the addition of those types of batteries to the grid in conjunction with the lithium-ion batteries, does that help to solve the problem that California is experiencing?
Well, there's been an evolution. If you don't mind, if I go back, just provide a little more context. There's been an evolution of battery storage on the grid. 10 years ago, when I first got into this industry, the batteries on the grid provided what we call ancillary services or frequency regulation, and they were providing about 30 minutes worth of storage. As the cost of batteries have come down, we saw systems that went from 30 minutes to an hour worth of storage, then to 2 hours. Today, 4 hours is really the sweet spot. And that has a lot to do with the role that batteries are now playing on the grid, which is twofold. One is shifting a lot of that solar energy from the day into the evening hours. And then also the role that they played during the electricity crisis, which is resource capacity or resource adequacy, where we really need to meet a 4 hour window of peak power. in order to meet the peak energy on the grid. So as the costs come down, we'll see systems that provide more hours of energy storage. And that's also when other battery chemistries and other types of batteries like flow batteries you mentioned will have an opportunity to enter the market and fulfill those other roles.
Now, how much battery storage capacity is in the queue or is planned for, the next year or two?
Great question. So there is a lot in the queue. The latest estimates are that in terms of US capacity, we're going to see double the amount of capacity in 2023 than we did in 2022. And by 2026, we're going to see a 5-fold increase in the amount of grid connected batteries. It's really quite amazing.
Sorry, I missed that. Is that at the national level or at the California level?
That's at the national level. And I don't have estimates or numbers for you based on California, but they're probably similar.
Okay. And explain how that fits with California's solar industry, because there's a little bit of a connection here to British Columbia, because the British Columbia energy minister, when asked where BC is going to get its more electricity to as it electrifies transportation and homes, said, "Oh, we'll just get cheap California solar." And so then I interviewed a number of economists, UC Berkeley and other places, and they said, "Well, that sounds great, except that there's a lot of investment in batteries that's designed to soak up that extra cheap solar. Why wouldn't they keep it in the state instead of curtailing it?" And is that likely to happen, or are we just going to see the solar industry continue to expand at an exponential rate?
Well, it's interesting because there is electricity shared all up and down the West Coast and the Western United States. And that area includes parts of Canada, as you mentioned, British Columbia. So one of the things that allowed California to make it through its most recent electricity crisis is that there was not all the heat, or the heat wave didn't extend into the Northwest. And so California was able to import hydroelectricity and wind energy from the Northwest, which allowed us to meet our electricity needs. That said, power can flow the other way up north, especially if there's transmission capacity and if solar overproduction in California is able to accommodate that. The role of batteries in the future is a really interesting question. And it really comes down to energy prices and the market that connects states like California, Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia. So I think that's going to be an evolving story and a very interesting one.
If you're looking out, say, 5 to 10 years down the road, what's the situation likely to be then? Are we going to see a tapering off of battery deployment, or will California still be, integrating battery storage into its grid at a similar clip?
Boy, trying to predict 10 years down the road is a tough one, and I'm a little reluctant to try to do so. But my feeling, and again, I'm a little bit biased because I think about batteries all the time. I've been a big proponent for batteries, both for electrifying our transportation sector and for decarbonizing our electricity grid. But batteries are here to stay, in my opinion. And we're going to be adding more and more batteries and other types of energy storage to the grid, not just over the next decade, but even beyond that. And energy storage in general is going to play an increasingly important role as we decarbonize the grid, bring more renewables onto the grid, and take fossil fuel-based energy production out of service.
What role might electric vehicle batteries play in this process? There seems to be some debate as to whether or not consumers will want their batteries discharged by the utility, how much it might help. What's your take on it?
Well, it's a very exciting prospect. Having electric vehicles, which are batteries on wheels, being able to also support the grid. And it's a very exciting prospect because of the sheer volume of batteries that we anticipate to be powering electric cars. And just to talk about that or put a number on it, we expect about 10 times more batteries to be in electric vehicles than connected directly to the grid that are dedicated to grid storage. And one of the exciting things too is that these batteries are already there. So for instance, if you have a Tesla Powerwall in your garage at home, you have about 10 to 15 kilowatt hours of energy in that Powerwall, but you probably paid $10,000 to $20,000 to purchase it and install it. At the same time, you might have a Tesla Model Y sitting in the garage next to your Powerwall, which has a 70 or even 100 kilowatt hours of energy in it. So much bigger battery. And that battery is already paid for because it's providing you your transportation service. So the possibility of using all of these batteries on wheels to support the grid is a very exciting one. There's been lots of research into that, including here on the campus of UC San Diego, where we partnered with a company called Nuvi. And we had electric vehicles on campus that were not only charging from our campus grid, but then discharging into our campus grid. So it's very exciting, lots of opportunity, but as you mentioned, there are some major barriers. And I think one of the biggest barriers is just getting this idea across to consumers about what the opportunity is and how it would work. There are already barriers in getting folks to transition from gas-powered cars to electric cars. And there's lots of new things to learn. How do I fuel? Where do I fuel? How much does it cost? Adding more complexity with respect to, oh, now my vehicle might actually discharge into the grid is going to be a big uphill challenge for consumers. So I think it's an incredibly exciting concept, but there are definitely barriers, especially with respect to consumer education and acceptance.
Well, Mike, thank you very much for this. Really appreciate your insights, and good luck with the battery situation. And hopefully things will be even better next year when the inevitable heat wave hits California.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to talk. And thanks very much.